Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know us, we love breaking down complex topics and making them super relevant for your UPSC prep.
Absolutely. And today, we've got something really interesting,
We're diving deep into the Time Use Survey 2024.
released just recently by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation.
This is like gold for understanding what's going on in India right now, socially, economically,
It's got a ton of data that's going to be useful for both mains and prelims.
especially if you're tackling questions about women's empowerment, labor market dynamics, social development.
Definitely. And today, we'll be focusing specifically on workforce participation trends based on what's in the report India Time Use Survey 2024, Workforce Participation.
So let's get right to it. One of the most striking findings is this jump in women's employment.
Yeah, from 21.8% in 2019 to 25% in 2024.
That's significant, right?
Absolutely. It is. It really points to a potential shift in our demographic dividend.
Interesting. So more women entering the workforce. What are the implications of that?
Well, think about it. More women working means greater earning potential for households.
Right. More disposable income.
Exactly. And when families have more money to spend, it fuels economic growth.
Through increased consumption.
Precisely.
Hmm.
This is a key concept, by the way, that UPSC examiners love.
Oh, yeah. They're always looking for those links between social trends and economic outcomes.
It shows you understand the bigger picture.
This is an upward trend in women's employment. It seems to align with a lot of the government initiatives focused on women's empowerment.
Yeah, definitely. You've got schemes like the Mahila Ihad,
Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana.
all geared towards supporting female entrepreneurship and financial independence.
But hold on a sec. There's also this other side to the story that the survey highlights.
Uh-oh. What's that?
While more women are joining the workforce, they're still spending a lot more time on unpaid domestic work.
Ah, yes, that's right.
It's almost like a paradox. More women working, but traditional roles haven't really shifted that much.
It's a complex issue for sure. We're talking about 305 minutes per day for women.
Versus only 88 minutes for men.
Exactly. That's a huge disparity.
And it really highlights the need for robust social infrastructure.
Absolutely. Affordable childcare is a big one.
Yeah, without it, many women are stuck between their career goals and family responsibilities.
It's a tough choice to make,
Yeah.
and it definitely limits their options.
So it makes you wonder, are we really making progress if women are just adding a workday on top of their existing workload?
Yeah, it's a valid question, and it brings us to the question of what kind of social policies can really create lasting change.
Hmm.
It's about going beyond just creating job opportunities. We need policies that provide support,
Yeah.
like mandatory parental leave.
Flexible work arrangements, that kind of thing.
Exactly, and we need a wider cultural shift, too.
Oh, you mean like challenging those traditional gender roles?
Yes, encouraging a more equitable division of labor at home.
That's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not just about domestic work either. The survey also found a huge gap in caregiving responsibilities.
Oh, absolutely. A whopping 41% of women are engaged in caregiving activities.
Compared to just 21.4% of men, that's almost double.
It really highlights how much caregiving still falls on women's shoulders.
And that has a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Definitely. Think about it. If a woman is spending most of her time caring for family members,
It limits her time for education skills development
Hmm.
and ultimately her ability to fully participate in the workforce.
It becomes a cycle that's really hard to break.
Absolutely. So it's clear that economic empowerment is tied to social empowerment.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just create jobs. We need an environment where women can access those opportunities.
Without being held back by traditional burdens, we need to rethink family structures and responsibilities.
100%. So what kind of concrete measures do you think could make a difference?
Well, for starters, we need to invest in quality, affordable childcare.
Especially in rural areas.
Yeah, that would be a game changer for so many women who are stuck at home because of childcare constraints.
It would. And think about it, investing in childcare isn't just about helping women.
It's about boosting the economy as a whole.
Right. More women working means greater productivity and economic growth.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Now, what about the role of the private sector?
They have a huge role to play. Companies need to create a more supportive environment for working women.
Things like flexible work schedules, on-site childcare.
Mentorship programs designed for women.
All of these are important steps toward a more inclusive and equitable workforce.
Couldn't agree more. And all of this ties back to what we were talking about earlier about the UPSC exam.
You mean how this data can be super useful for the mains exam?
Exactly. Imagine you're tackling an essay question on women's empowerment.
This time, use survey data gives you concrete evidence to support your arguments.
It's not just theory. It's real-world insights.
And remember, UPSC examiners love to see that you can apply your knowledge to real-world scenarios.
Absolutely. So connecting these survey insights to policy recommendations is key.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another interesting aspect of the survey.
What's that?
The time people spend on leisure and education.
Okay, interesting. So
Yeah.
what did the survey say?
Well, it found that people are averaging 171 minutes per day on leisure activities.
That's quite a bit. So what's the significance of that?
Well, leisure time is important for individual well-being.
It helps reduce stress and can foster creativity.
It's a reminder that development isn't just about economic indicators.
It's about quality of life and creating a society where people have the time and resources to pursue their interests.
Exactly. And speaking of pursuing interests, the survey also had some really interesting findings about education.
Like what?
A whopping 89.3% of children aged 6 to 14 are participating in learning activities.
And they're spending around 413 minutes per day studying.
That's pretty impressive.
It really shows a strong emphasis on education in India, which is a positive sign for the future.
Because a well-educated population is key to achieving sustainable development.
And economic growth. And this data point could be really helpful for tackling questions related to education policy, literacy rates, demographic trends.
Absolutely. And for those of you prepping for prelims, don't underestimate the importance of the smaller details. The Time U survey can throw some fact-based questions your way.
You mean about the average time spent on certain activity?
Exactly. So make sure you have a good grasp of those key figures. But remember, it's not just about memorizing numbers.
Right. It's about understanding the trends, the context, the implications.
For example, how does the rise in women's workforce participation correlate with the increase in time spent on education by children?
Are there any connections there? These are the kinds of questions that will help you connect the dots and see the bigger picture.
The UPSC exam is all about testing your analytical skills.
Your ability to make connections between different pieces of information.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground today. But before we wrap up, I want to address something that many aspirants struggle with.
What's that?
Information overload.
Ah, yes. With so much to study, it's easy to get overwhelmed.
So how do you make sure these time use survey insights stick?
Well, I think the key is to break down the information into manageable chunks.
Focus on the key trends and connect them back to relevant UPSC topics.
Exactly. When you're studying women's empowerment, think back to the time use survey data on workforce participation in unpaid work.
Use it as evidence to support your arguments.
And don't treat this survey as a standalone report.
Integrate it into your existing knowledge base and use it to enrich your understanding of various UPSC themes.
Makes sense. So to sum it up, this survey is a goldmine of information.
Especially for those of you tackling the mains exam.
It gives you real-world data to back up your arguments, and it highlights some of the most important social and economic trends shaping India today.
All right, so we're back. And for this final part, I want to shift gears a bit. Think about the mains exam.
Okay, good idea. Let's get practical.
Imagine you're facing a question like that. Analyze the impact of changing social norms on women's roles in contemporary India.
Oh, that's a classic.
It is. How can we use the time use survey data to really nail that answer?
Well, this is where the survey becomes super valuable. It's like a gold mine of evidence. You can start by highlighting the increase in women's workforce participation.
Right. Mention that jump from 21.8 to 25%.
Exactly. Quote the figures. But then you pivot. Okay? You bring in the other side, the persistent gender gap in unpaid work.
So use those differences in time spent on domestic chores
to show that it's not a simple story. It's complex.
It's not just about more women working. It's about redefining roles and responsibilities.
Absolutely. And don't forget, real-world examples are crucial.
Oh, yeah. The examiners love those.
Think about a policy like Beti Bachao, Beti Patao.
It directly addresses those deep-rooted social norms.
Weaving in those examples shows you can connect the dots
between data policy and how it all plays out in society.
It's about showing that nuanced understanding.
And you know what? The time use survey itself could be the source of mains questions.
Oh, you mean like they could ask a question directly about it?
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine a question about the implications of rising leisure time in India.
That's interesting. It's not something we usually think about in the context of UPSC.
I know, but it's becoming more relevant as India develops.
It makes you think outside the box.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Okay, I like it.
This survey, it's not just numbers. It's a reflection of people's lives. Millions of Indians.
It tells a story.
It does, about aspirations, challenges, the way our society is evolving.
And for all you future civil servants out there,
Understanding these nuances is so important.
the decisions you make, they're going to impact the very people in this data.
It's real. It's not just theory.
So dive into these findings. Let them fuel your passion for serving the nation.
That's a great way to put it. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Time U Survey 2024.
We covered a lot.
We did. And hopefully you've got some valuable insights that'll give you an edge in your prep.
Remember, your success is our mission.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your fellow aspirants.
And don't forget, leave a comment below if you have any questions.
Or if there are any topics you'd like us to explore in the future.
We're always here to support you on your UPSC journey.
Until next time, happy studying and best of luck with your preparation.
All the best.
One last thing. Our insights today were drawing from the Hindu and the PIB.